Have you ever stepped out onto the street on a blustery day, felt every stray lock of hair whip across your face, completely blocking your vision, and had a flash of irritation thinking you needed a haircut immediately? In our modern world, dealing with overly long hair is as simple as booking a salon appointment, where sharp scissors, convenient electric clippers, and dozens of fragrant styling products await. But close your eyes for a moment. Let the sounds of modern life fade away and allow your mind to drift back in time, thousands, then tens of thousands of years ago, to a time when our ancestors faced the harshness of Mother Nature barehanded. Try to imagine, what would ancient people do, and how did they cope when their hair kept growing, cascading down to cover their eyes, turning an evolutionary gift into a deadly trap? To fully understand this story, we must first look at a fascinating biological fact. Humans are among the very few mammals that possess hair that grows continuously, without naturally shedding when it reaches a certain limit. Evolutionary scientists believe that, as our ancestors began to stand upright and walk on two legs across the sun-drenched savannas of Africa, most of their body hair thinned out to help sweat glands function more efficiently, cooling the body during long-distance hunts. However, the hair on the top of the head was retained and thrived. It acted as an excellent thermal insulator, protecting the increasingly developed human brain from the scorching sun above, while keeping the head warm during freezing winter nights. Yet, this gift of survival came with a price. Hair just kept growing, relentlessly, adding 1 to 2 centimeters every month. And in a wild world, where the line between life and death was measured in milliseconds, an obstructed view caused by a mess of hair falling over the eyes was nothing short of a death sentence. Imagine a prehistoric hunter crouching in the bushes, his intense gaze tracking his prey. Suddenly, a gust of wind blows by, and his untamed, unkempt hair crashes down, completely obscuring his vision. In just that single second of distraction, the prey could escape, or worse, he might fail to spot a saber-toothed tiger waiting to pounce from behind a nearby rock. Clearly, to survive, prehistoric humans could not just sit idly by and let their hair grow wild. They were forced to figure out a way to tame it, even without the slightest concept of metal scissors or razors. The very first and most instinctive solution for ancient people was not to cut it, but to tie it back. Using materials readily available in nature, they created humanity's first hair ties. These could be flexible vines pulled from tree trunks, long blades of grass woven tightly together, or even the dried sinews and intestines of hunted animals, which made for incredibly strong cords. They pulled all the hair out of their faces and bound it securely. Some tribes even used sharp thorns, polished animal bones, or sturdy twigs as hairpins, fashioning their massive manes into neat buns on top of their heads. But the habit of tying hair only offered a temporary fix. When the hair became too long, too heavy, and especially too dirty, it became a genuine burden. Keep in mind that at that time, the concept of shampoo or clean water for regular bathing was an extreme luxury. The long hair of prehistoric people was soaked in sweat, dirt, sand, and the grease of the animals they consumed. Over time, this mixture caused the hair strands to clump and tangle together, forming massive, stiff, and heavy natural mats, what we would recognize today as dreadlocks. While these matted locks might naturally fall away from the eyes due to their sheer weight, they brought about another disaster: parasites. This was a perfect paradise for lice, fleas, and countless types of bacteria to multiply. Overly long matted hair caused not only maddening itchiness that shattered concentration during a hunt, but it could also lead to severe scalp infections, resulting in patchy hair loss, or even threatening one's life if bacteria entered open wounds caused by scratching. Faced with such miseries, cutting hair short became an urgent necessity. But how do you cut hair without scissors? Ancient humans proved that human ingenuity is limitless when backed into a corner. The first tools they utilized were stones. With the advent of stone flaking technology, our ancestors learned how to strike flint and obsidian to create flakes with razor-sharp edges. However, do not imagine them gently snipping hair like a modern stylist. Stone Age haircuts were probably much closer to chopping or sawing. One person would have to lay their locks of hair on a hard log or a flat rock. Then, another person would forcefully saw back and forth with a sharp stone flake, or strike a heavier stone against a sharp blade to sever the hair. This process was certainly not gentle. It pulled the scalp, caused immense pain, and left behind jagged, uneven, spiky hairstyles. In coastal areas, people repurposed sharp-edged shells as tools for shaving and haircutting, though the effectiveness was, at best, barely acceptable. Besides using stones, prehistoric humans employed another, much faster but equally dangerous method: using fire. Fire provided not only light, warmth, and cooked food, but also served as the most primitive grooming tool. When hair grew too long and blocked their vision, a person could take a smoldering branch, glowing with red embers, and carefully singe off the ends of their hair. This technique required immense dexterity and a steady hand, for with just one careless move, the flames could flare up, engulfing the entire head of hair and causing severe burns. Around the flickering campfires in dark caves tens of thousands of years ago, alongside the mouth-watering aroma of roasted meat, the acrid stench of burning hair was likely a highly familiar scent of prehistoric daily life. Burning hair not only reduced its length quickly, but also caused the ends to singe and harden, making it less prone to tangling and splitting compared to being sawed off by stones. Furthermore, the intense heat of the fire helped eradicate a portion of the lice residing in the hair tips. As time flowed on, humanity stepped out of the caves, invented agriculture, and the first great civilizations began to sprout along the major river basins. By this point, dealing with hair that covered the eyes was no longer purely a battle for survival. It had been elevated into art, social norms, religion, and class division. Let us travel to the land of the pharaohs, where the dry heat of the desert and an obsession with cleanliness birthed a completely different hair culture. In ancient Egypt, lice and heat were humanity's mortal enemies. Long hair covering the eyes was not only cumbersome, but also a horrific breeding ground for disease. Therefore, the Egyptians opted for the most drastic solution: shaving it all off. From the mighty pharaohs and high priests to poor farmers, having a completely shaved head and a hairless body was considered the ultimate standard of purity. The dawn of metallurgy provided them with sharp copper razors, making the mowing process much easier and smoother than using stones or shells. But without hair, a bald head would easily sunburn under the unforgiving African sun. Their solution? Wigs. Ancient Egyptians crafted incredibly elaborate wigs, meticulously woven from real human hair, sheep's wool, or plant fibers, in various lengths and styles to showcase social status. While working or attending ceremonies, they wore wigs for beauty and protection, but upon returning home to rest or sleep, they simply took them off, enjoying the coolness and absolute freedom from the worry of hair falling into their eyes or being attacked by lice. In stark contrast to the Egyptians' ruthless approach to hair, let us move eastward to the civilization of ancient China, where hair was considered sacred, an inseparable part of one's life and morality. In Confucian philosophy, a famous passage from the classic of filial piety states, "Our bodies, to every hair and shred of skin, are received from our parents. We must not presume to injure or wound them." This is the beginning of filial piety. Because of this deeply rooted belief, ancient Chinese people, regardless of gender, absolutely never cut their hair throughout their entire lives, except in exceptionally rare circumstances or upon becoming a Buddhist monk or nun. Being forced to have one's hair cut was considered an extremely humiliating punishment known as kun, attacking a person's honor and dignity as viciously as physical torture. So, with hair that was never cut, growing endlessly from birth until death, how did the ancient Chinese keep it out of their faces during daily activities? The answer lay in the highly intricate art of grooming and styling. Every morning, brushing, pinning, and tying one's hair was a mandatory ritual for both men and women. Men usually combed all their hair back, coiled it into a small bun on the top of their head, and secured it with a hairpin or a ceremonial headpiece called a guan. Women had hundreds of elaborate ways to style their hair. varying depending on their age, social class, and marital status. Thanks to smooth horn combs, nourishing camellia oils, and deft hands, their immensely long hair, instead of being an obstacle blocking their sight, was transformed into a masterpiece atop their heads, reflecting a person's maturity, discipline, and virtue. Continuing our journey into ancient Europe, we encountered different, vibrantly colored cultural tapestries regarding how humans tame their hair. The northern Viking warriors and ancient Celtic tribes, living in freezing climates and constantly engaging in warfare, chose to braid their hair. Long locks were woven into numerous small braids or tied into complex knots, such as the famous Suebian knot of the Germanic tribes. This hairstyle not only kept the hair neatly secured at the back, preventing it from flying wildly into their eyes while riding horses or swinging swords on the battlefield, but it also created an illusion of height, making the warriors look more intimidating and massive to mentally overpower their enemies. They even knew how to mix animal fat with wood ash to create a highly alkaline solution, which was used both to bleach their hair a lighter color and as an ancient hairspray, cementing the hair in place, defiant against any storm. Reaching the zenith of the Roman Empire and ancient Greece, managing hair was no longer a DIY task at home. It had birthed the specialized profession, the barber. Barbershops, known as tonstrina, became the most bustling social hubs for Roman men. The Romans favored a neat, civilized look, a clean-shaven face and short, cropped hair hugging the scalp, because they viewed this as the pinnacle of civilization, distinguishing themselves from the long-haired barbarian tribes surrounding them. Having hair cover one's eyes was absolutely unacceptable for a proud Roman citizen. However, the experience of getting a haircut in ancient Rome was nowhere near as relaxing as a modern spa day. Barbers used rudimentary iron shears and copper or iron razors that were not entirely sharp. Coupled with the total absence of shaving soap or lubricating lather, every stroke of the razor scraping against the face and scalp was a test of bravery. Accidental cuts and bleeding were so commonplace that barbers constantly kept spiderwebs or a special plaster on hand to patch up their clients' wounds. Despite the pain and the lurking risk of infection, driven by the desire to maintain a civilized appearance without a single stray hair falling across their foreheads, Roman men patiently sat for hours in the barber's chair. Looking back over the long, arduous journey of human history, we can see that the way humans dealt with overly long hair obstructing their vision is a magnificent testament to the power of evolution, intellect, and culture. From the desperate struggles of prehistoric humans, using sharp stone flakes to saw through sweat-matted locks to survive against wild beasts, to the decisive copper razor strokes of Egyptian pharaohs chasing away lice. From the profound philosophies of life woven into every hairpin and bun by the ancient Chinese, to the war-ready braids of the Vikings and the metallic clicking of iron shears in Roman barbershops. Hair, inherently just a biological remnant left over by evolution, inadvertently became an obstacle to our sight, yet it was ultimately conquered by humanity and transformed into a symbol of power, religion, beauty, and personal identity. Now, whenever you stand in front of the mirror, holding small scissors to trim the stray bangs poking your eyes, or relax your head in a salon chair letting a stylist create your perfect look, remember that you are partaking in a behavior with tens of thousands of years of history. Behind that seemingly small and obvious action lies a long saga of hardship, sweat, monumental inventions, and the endless cultural currents of our ancestors. Without those flint flakes, those singeing flames, and the copper hairpins and razors of yesterday, there would be no neat, voluminous, and elegant hairstyles today. Human creativity stems from the most seemingly absurd challenges of nature, and ensuring that our hair never obscures our eyes, the windows to our souls, and our very survival, was a small but monumental step allowing humanity to open its eyes wide, see the path forward clearly, and build the civilized world we know today.